So for every hour you put into your business, you're not putting into your family. And it's easy to get to this point and say, you know what? I'm gonna put my head down, I'm gonna work on this business, I'm gonna build this thing, and then I'll be set, and then I'll have all of this time for my family. And all of a sudden you're like 50 years old and you're wondering, what the hell happened? Where'd that time go? Because it's never enough. If there's something that you love and you care about, it's never enough, and that's the problem. If you love your family, it's never enough time with them. And also, if you're building a business, you're doing it because you have a passion for it, the thing that you're building. And there's never enough time for that. And this is what I mean when I say the problem with life is not that there isn't anything to do. The problem with life is there's so much to do, and there's too much to do. And for myself, how best to spend the time inevitably becomes the question. And it just strikes me as a thing that's just unspeakably sad in a life that's as short as ours. Even if you have 100 years, you can't spend all the time you want with your family. You can't spend all the time you want with your friends. You can't spend all the time you want with building a business if that's what you want to build, or even a career. And this is why people oftentimes, rather than taking a career, they'll take a job, because it allows them to spend more time with their family, which is fantastic if that's what you want, and if that's what you need. But to think that you can have it all, no, you can't. But that's also, by the way, what makes it so valuable. Because now you recognize, in order to get this family, I had to sacrifice some things at my career. But because you sacrificed it, that makes the family matter more, because you gave up something to get that. You don't achieve great things without sacrificing some things. You know, I can tell you all about that. But you're going to have to sacrifice if you want to build something real and meaningful. The question is going to be, what are you willing to sacrifice? I was telling one of my other classes, I'm not sure if I've ever told you this before, but life is suffering. You don't get to choose not to, but you can choose what you're going to suffer for. You guys know what subtext is? Subtext is what you're saying is your text. What you're saying is your subtext, what you're getting at. You can learn a lot about what people think, not necessarily by what they say, which is true, but also by what they don't say. What will a person do to get riches and wealth? Anything. Lie, cheat, murder, steal, manipulate, backstab, burn down nations. And yet there's something that's missing from all of that. And it's the most obvious thing.
Tell the truth.
What's that?
Tell the truth.
Tell the truth? Even more basic than that. Work hard.
Oh.
And it's funny to me because we'll say like the things that we want. Oh man, I wanna graduate. God, I wanna graduate. Man, how do I do it? Your work? No, but it's really though. I know. ChatGPT. Cheat. Kiss ass. That's how I'll do it. Why don't you just do your work and learn? And more important than doing your work, learn something. No, but really, I would kill to get that diploma. I would burn down nations. Yeah, but why not just do the thing that you need to do to actually earn it and get it? No, but seriously. What else? I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we have a quiz today on the allegory of the cave. Yeah. I try to stress this, and I really mean this, guys. I hope you figure this out, man. There's an it. There's always an it. Remember, is it dark outside? What's the it to which you're referring? What's wrong with stealing? Well, you're taking somebody else's stuff. Yeah, you just defined stealing for me. But what is wrong with that action? And whether you think it's wrong or whether you think it's right, you have to recognize that there's a problem with it, which is if all of a sudden, if I handed you $1 million today, what would you do with it? And we know what people would do with it because we see what people do with it when they win the lottery. What do people do with it? They buy houses, they buy cars, they even try to say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to buy my mom a house, that makes me feel better about it. And so how much have you now spent? $3 million. And you're like, how the hell did I just spend? I just won $1 million. How did I spend $3 million? Well, because you don't understand that you have to, when you buy property, you also pay property taxes, and you also have to realize that you pay, there was a tax that you had to pay when you got the money. And you have, in other words, if you just handed a whole bunch of money, you jumped over the whole process of figuring out how to manage money. This is one of the reasons that celebrities and athletes, they go broke. Because you've never had anything your whole life, and all of a sudden someone hands you a bunch of stuff and you have no idea what to do with it. It's like a dog chasing a car. He's got no idea what he'd do with it if he caught it. And then imagine if he all of a sudden catches it and he's just got now this big hunk of milk. Like, well, now what do I do with it? Probably destroy his own teeth. And this is one of the reasons that I don't know if the other sports do it. I know the NFL does it. When you're a rookie, you're required to take a money management class. I don't know what happens if you don't take it. I don't know if they kick you out of the league or something. I doubt it. But you're required to take a money management class. In other words, you're learning, you just got this salary. You're required to learn how to manage that stuff. And that's one of the reasons I asked that. Because even if you can't say, well, there's no, I can't figure out why it's wrong to steal. At the very least, you can realize why it is that it's bad to get a whole bunch of money all of a sudden at once. And to think like, well, once I get the money, then I'll figure out how to manage it. Is that really your nature, though? Is that really anybody's nature? I mean, I wonder if I said to you, even as I just said to you, imagine if you all of a sudden had $1 million. I wonder how many of us in our heads started thinking about all the things that we would do to spend it. And I wonder how many of us said, oh my gosh, $1 million? I could easily put that into X stock, or I could easily put that into developing this, or I could easily use that to develop my career in some certain direction. In other words, I wonder how many of us thought about investing the money versus what I would buy with it. And so that's the problem with a lot of things in life. It's like we want to get to that last stage before rather than working along the process. And it's not just that you should work along the process because it's the right thing to do, although it is the right thing to do, and you're right, it is wrong to steal from people. And even if I ask you, by the way, what's wrong with stealing, it's hard for so many people to answer. One of the reasons it's wrong to steal is because when you steal money from somebody or steal property from somebody, you're stealing their life from them. They put hours and days and weeks and months or years in some cases into working to get the money to buy the thing that you just stole. You just jumped over all of that hard work process and took life from a person. We just don't think of it that way. We think of it as, well, you can replace property. Yeah, but you can't replace the time it took to earn it. So if you jump over all of that hard work process, it's very difficult to, first off, to appreciate it. This is why people who inherit money tend to lose it. I told you, wealth in this country typically is 3 generations. There's a person who earns it, their children who helped develop it because they were there when it was earned. They know the process. And then the grandchildren who inherit it, it's usually gone by the end of the 3rd generation. Because they not only do they not appreciate it because it's just like Tuesday for them wealth, but also because they don't know how to manage it, but also because they don't know the work it takes to get it and to maintain it. And this is one of the reasons it's good to work to attain the things, because then you know what it takes to have it and what it takes to maintain it. If something is just given to you, just pops out of the sky, there's no work involved, again, you can't appreciate it, but also you just don't know what to do with it once you get it. And there's a hubris, there's an arrogance there that's just like, oh, I know what I would do with it. Yeah, but do you know what you should do with it, which are 2 very different things. We think about the things in our lives that we want, and it's fine to want things, of course, but to be fluid with it, to understand that the things that you want might not be the things that you need. It's like, having a diploma, which is really meaningless, versus having a college degree, which is meaningless, but I shouldn't say meaningless, it represents a lot of hard work. Should be anyway. But moreover, it's what you get out of it. It's that education at the end. And one of the problems is that we want the things that we want. We want the grand scope of the things that we want. I was talking to somebody yesterday, a former student who graduated, and as I was leaving, we were in the parking lot, and he was asking me about having it all. And he's like, so how is it that a person can have it all? And I laughed. I said, come on, man. You're not 13. I said, you're not 12 years old anymore. What do you mean have it all? You know, how do you know? Don't you know by now that you can't have it all? You can't have the career and the family and the friends and the hobbies and have the whole thing because there's only 24 hours in a day. Every hour that you put into your family, he wants to build a business. And he's like kind of hedging about this girl that he wants to start going out with. He broke up with somebody. He's hedging on this girl he wants to go out with. He likes her a lot. And he was saying that he really wants to pursue that, but he also wants to pursue this business dream he has. And I said, for every hour you put into that relationship, you're not putting into your business. So every hour you're gonna have to manage out and figure out what's the most important thing at this moment. And what's the most important thing next week? If you're building something, you can't think about just this one moment. When you're building a building, you can't just say, oh, how about this one brick? Perfect. How about this other brick? Perfect. You do have to manage it that way, but you have to keep an eye on the whole building that you're building. You can't just look at the single bricks and every time just go, I'm just gonna put the brick where I feel like it should go. I'm gonna trust my feelings on this. No, you have to look at the long-term thing. You have to keep an eye on the whole project that you're building while you're building those little steps. And so it isn't just what's important today. It's what's going to be important next week, which takes vision, which takes foresight. And so he was just like, well, trying to figure this out because he just really wants to have these two things. And I said, I hear you, man. We also want world peace. We also want to end famine. So a lot of things that we want, but we have to be realistic. We have to live in the world that we actually live in. And so for every hour you put into your business, you're not putting into your family. And it's easy to get to this point and say, you know what? I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to work on this business. I'm going to build this thing, and then I'll be set, and then I'll have all of this time for my family. And all of a sudden, you're like 50 years old, and you're wondering, what the hell happened? Where'd that time go? Because it's never enough. If there's something that you love and you care about, it's never enough, and that's the problem. If you love your family, it's never enough time with them. And also, if you're building a business, you're doing it because you have a passion for it, the thing that you're building. And there's never enough time for that. And this is what I mean when I say the problem with life is not that there isn't anything to do. The problem with life is there's so much to do, and there's too much to do. And for myself, how best to spend the time inevitably becomes the question. And it just strikes me as a thing that's just unspeakably sad in a life that's as short as ours. Even if you have 100 years, you can't spend all the time you want with your family. You can't spend all the time you want with your friends. You can't spend all the time you want with building a business if that's what you want to build, or even a career. And this is why people oftentimes, rather than taking a career, they'll take a job, because it allows them to spend more time with their family, which is fantastic if that's what you want, and if that's what you need, and if that's what you should pursue. Those three things together. But figuring out what that is, that can be a lifelong drive for a lot of people. But to think that you can have it all, no, you can't. But that's also, by the way, what makes it so valuable. Because now you recognize, in order to get this family, I had to sacrifice some things at my career. But because you sacrificed it, that makes the family matter more, because you gave up something to get that. If you have to give up time with your family to pursue your career, it will help you appreciate your career more. And he was asking me, well, how do you give up, how do you sacrifice relationships, or how do you sacrifice this or sacrifice that without having this deep sense of melancholy that overcomes you? And in other words, like that sense of, I feel terrible about missing out on this thing, but I really need to build that. I said, I don't know. Let me know when you figure it out. You don't achieve great things without sacrificing some things. I can tell you all about that. But you're going to have to sacrifice if you want to build something real and meaningful. The question is going to be, what are you willing to sacrifice? I was telling one of my other classes, I'm not sure if I've ever told you this before, but life is suffering. You don't get to choose not to, but you can choose what you're going to suffer for. What's the important thing in your life? What's the thing that you want to build? And then when you figure that out, focus on it. Focus on it like a Roman. Just focus on it and zero in on it. But understand that it's going to cost you. I mean, even if you look at someone like Elon Musk, people think, wow, I want to be like him. The guy runs like 5 companies, and he runs no place in like 14 of his children's lives. This guy can't keep a relationship together, any kind of relationship, marriage, children, or whatever. And you know what? I'm glad he has a crappy relationship with his children, because I really want to go to Mars. Not so good for the children, not so good for his families, not so good for his personal life, but man, isn't it dope that you can drive a car that's faster than a Porsche while it's towing another Porsche? I'm glad he's the one to sacrifice that. But the question, I guess, ultimately becomes, what is it you're willing to sacrifice in pursuit of the things that you want? Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Yeah.